Every year in fantasy, there's a couple of absolutely elite running back options that go very close to the top of the draft, and then some really solid guys through the second and third rounds. But what happens when we get past those first couple of rounds of elite guys? This is what we refer to as the running back dead zone. And in your home leagues, guys all the way down to RB25 are going to be coming off the board as early as round 3 to 4. For the most part, our safest option is just going to be to avoid the dead zone completely and pick up drafting running backs in the later rounds when they start to become better values. But who exactly are the big landmines that we need to be avoiding 100%, and who are some possible gems that could actually return on their ADP in the dead zone? Let's get into it. Running back number 17 off the board this year is Alvin Kamara. He's going to be playing at age 29, and he's already showed us that he's fallen off a little bit from the explosive running standpoint. That being said, we can probably feel confident that Kamara will earn some of the most targets out of any running back this season, with no other options out of the Saints backfield and limited options in their passing game on the whole. And this is really where Kamara has shown us that elite upside in previous seasons. Now that he's fallen off from a running perspective, that upside probably isn't going to be elite, but he should still offer us a good floor on the receiving side of things, especially in PPR leagues. I believe Alvin Kamara has low-end RB1 upside in PPR leagues specifically. I will take him there as the RB17. Running back 18 off the board is David Montgomery, who's going to be splitting time with Jahmyr Gibbs in a major way. He's probably going to cede all of the pass-catching work to Jahmyr Gibbs, and at the end of last season, we saw the Lions work them in pretty much equally on the goal line as well. Taking serious chunks out of the volume of the two most valuable types of touches for a running back in fantasy is definitely not a good sign for Montgomery. I'm fading him at RB18. Now, James Conner at RB19 is a different story. The Cardinals drafted Trey Benson this year to bring in as Conner's backup, and they've been very clear that it is as Conner's backup throughout the course of the offseason. Conner should be great this year. The one ding on him is that in this Cardinals offense, he will cede most of the third down work to another back. That's just the Arizona system. But if I've been running 0 RB up to this point, I think James Conner gives a very solid floor with a low-end RB1 ceiling. I'll take him as the RB19. Aaron Jones is going to be 28 this season. He's going as the RB20. He hasn't really shown us the fall-off and explosiveness that Alvin Kamara showed us, but we can start to expect it just given the proximity to the age cliff. I am projecting Minnesota to have a bit of a rocky start to the season, relying on either Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy to get them through. Also worth noting that Ty Chandler is a backup here in Minnesota. He's very competent and should siphon some amount of work away from Jones. Kamara doesn't really have that in the New Orleans offense. Overall, give me a soft fade on Aaron Jones. I will take him occasionally, but right around here is where I start to feel like the range of outcomes for these backs is very similar to what you can find with guys 20 to 30 picks later in the draft. Moving on to Ramondre Stevenson as the RB21. He's much younger than the guys we've talked about so far. He's a great pass catcher and a great goal line back. The one thing holding him back is that this Patriots offense is probably going to suck. As you can see, Mondre is far and away the highest ranked player from a fantasy perspective on this team. Their next most interesting guy is Jalen Polk, who's going near the end of the 11th round. So the lack of competition is going to give Ramondre a nice floor, but the lack of scoring on the offense as a whole is going to limit his ceiling. I think we can pretty confidently project him at right around this mid to low end RB2. That value is just about perfect at RB21. Then we got the Pittsburgh guys here at 22 and 23. I'll be up front. I like both of these guys at ADP. Arthur Smith showed us last year with the Falcons that he loves a running back rotation, and this is like the perfect set of guys to do it with. Najee Harris has that name value, and then Jaylen Warren looks like the better pass catcher and the more explosive back, at least he did last year. Barring a trade for Brandon Ayuk, there's not a lot of great receiving options on this team, and their quarterback one is still up in the air. That probably means they're just going to want to ground and pound for the most part. Has to be through one of these guys. Now, I am super skeeved out by Zamir White at RB24. He did play effectively for this team at the end of last year, but it's hard for me not to see ghosts of Alexander Mattison when I look at this profile. Throughout the first 2 years of his career, Zamir White has really been a solid backup and nothing more. He's never pushed for a starting role outside of injury to the guy ahead of him. Now he's the RB1 by default, just since there is no guy ahead of him, but I worry that he doesn't have the skill set to provide the avenue to elite production in fantasy, especially on a Raiders offense that we don't expect to be very good this season. DeAndre Swift is the RB25 this year for the Bears. I am extremely concerned about him after seeing their first preseason game. The issue isn't exactly that Swift only played 2 snaps in this game. I mean, that's fine. Plenty of teams just completely rest their starters for preseason games. My real issue here is that I saw Travis Homer sub in for every single third down snap while the starters were on the field. Now, Roschon Johnson missed this game for injury, so maybe we can expect it to be him rather than Travis Homer, but that combined with the frequent usage of Khalil Herbert makes me think this is going to be a very heavy running back rotation in Chicago. Given the level of talent in the passing game for the Bears offense, I doubt they're going to be too interested in leaning so heavily on the RBs that Swift would be able to get the volume he needs while splitting time. So for that reason, I'll be fading DeAndre Swift heavily from RB25. Raheem Mostert is 32 years old, but he's somehow coming off his best season by far in the NFL. He finished last year with 18 touchdowns as the RB2 on the season. Now he's going as the RB26 because it's hard for us to know, was that just some crazy fluke, or is this guy actually hitting his prime at age 30 plus? The other big reason we see Mostert fade this far in the rankings from his performance last year is that his fellow running mate Devon Achane should be taking a step forward from the volume perspective this year. I would expect to see Mostert on the field for this Miami team only 35 to 40% of the time. That being said, the Miami Dolphins still project as one of the best offenses in the NFL this season, so the touchdown upside should still be there for Mostert to potentially repeat. We're also getting toward the end of the running back dead zone now, maybe even out of it, depending on how your league is drafting. I'll take a decent amount of Raheem Mostert at RB26. And the last guy I might consider a dead zone running back is Jonathan Brooks, being drafted on Underdog right now as the RB27. He is going to start the year injured. I'm taking almost none of him, and I'm taking a ton of Chuba Hubbard 10 plus rounds after this. All right, thanks guys for watching. Check out my profile for plenty more fantasy advice, and I'll see you in the next one.